Today, we have a couple of special guests who have both dedicated their lives to a problem hockey doesn't want to talk about. Dan Carcillo won 2 Stanley Cups, fought 164 fights, and was one of the most feared enforcers in the NHL. But when retirement came, the damage those fights left behind nearly cost him everything: his health, his mind, and at his lowest point, his life. This is the story of how he found his way back, and why he refused to stay silent. Dr. Victoria Silverwood is a criminologist at Swansea University, founder of Heads Up Hockey, and a researcher who has spent years studying violence and harm inside professional sport. One lived it, one studies it. Both are here to talk about it. Let's get into it.
Hi, Dan. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. It feels very strange to talk to such an accomplished athlete without giving a big long list of your achievements. Obviously, your successful hockey career, your 2 Stanley Cup rings. But the focus of what we're talking about today is what you've accomplished since your retirement from hockey in the last sort of 10 or 11 years. I think your career speaks for itself, and people will be aware of what you've done on the ice, but it's really nice to take a chance to hear about what you've been doing since retiring from the NHL and the massive difference you're making to people. So thanks for joining us.
Of course. Yeah, good to see you again. It's been a while.
A long time. So I was just wondering if there's, you've been massively influential in terms of the sort of support you're given post-career transition for other players, for advocacy for brain health and good mental health. How does it feel to talk about your post-hockey career rather than just your hockey career?
Yeah, it feels good. When I first retired, and I think a lot of athletes go through this, they have to almost go through like a period of mourning, even though I didn't know it, because a very big piece of you dies, the athlete in you. You're no longer competing. And then, the reality of professional sports is you're either not good enough to continue to play, or you get hurt and you can't play anymore. But the game decides when it's done with you, other than usually it's not the other way around. And so, when I stopped, I was in that group that was forced to stop just because of these symptoms of brain injury. And so I went through a pretty dark period of, almost like living in this kind of almost victimhood mindset of continuing to blame the institutions that I came up in and that I played for not protecting us enough if they had certain information. And, I'm in a very different mindset now, in the sense that, of course, there still needs to be accountability, and the care should be in line with just treating human beings properly. But I'm also very well aware that there's these other pressures that are on the athlete, on the organizations, and I'm one of the men that made it out, that didn't end up accidentally overdosing or committing suicide, or because of the symptoms that I had. I was close. I was very close towards the end. I had those thoughts. And so when you do get recovery, if you're lucky enough to take the help and get to a point of just kind of throwing up your arms and using some of these alternative medicines that are available, then you get to a point in your life where you're grateful for the suffering, and you're grateful to be able to hopefully carry a certain message in a certain way, so that others hear it, and can take advantage of it.
Yeah. And when did you first notice something was wrong? Obviously, you were still playing in your final season, and you were realizing that you'd had concussions. I believe it's 7 concussions that you knew of, as well as other sort of non-concussion injuries.
Yeah, so it was actually in 2012. A couple of us started to talk about this, Dr. Carrick, and we knew that like Sidney Crosby had gone to him to recover from his concussions, and so we took an invitation to go to his a couple of his centers. One of his centers, it was then in Georgia, myself, Steve Monador, Ben Eager, a couple guys went. So like that was really, we were starting to, because you had such a long layoff. And, it's funny when you're in the fight, you don't really know how sick you are. But when you get out of the fight, out of that environment, and you get into civilian life, and you're in the gym for an extended period of time and not really like playing again, you start to realize like, whoa, there's some things that are off about me. And so I started to notice just like memory recall wasn't necessarily there. My sleep habits were really off. I was searching and using other substances to kind of numb out, to disconnect, because it was scary. So we took some time at some of these centers. We got a little bit better. It moved the needle. I think anything that you do and take a proactive approach to your health or brain health, working on like vestibular training, ocular training, like earlobe fluid, obviously like eye tracking, which all of these things get affected in concussion. So that was kind of the first, peeling back the onion, so to speak. And then it was really my last year. I had my 6th concussion the year before. My son was born in 2014, and I was talking with Steve a lot. Steve Monador and I were really close, and he was dealing with a lot of these symptoms when he was in Europe, and then he ended up stopping, and then this cascade effect started to happen. And that last year after my 6th, I was like, yeah, no, I don't know if I can do this again. And then I got my 7th concussion in March. We ended up winning our 2nd Stanley Cup. And so all of those things, Steve's death in February really impacted me. And so I was kind of just luckily spiritually done. And then mentally, I knew I was done. And then the real fight, started to happen, where you go through the medical system and you start getting the pharmaceuticals prescribed. The doctors aren't really asking you about past concussions, and those exacerbate certain things. You start to go to the neurological wellness centers. You feel good when you're there, but nobody can, spend their whole life in a clinic and spend $1,500 a day in these cash pay. It's really expensive. And then you start to use holistic tools like float tanks, hyperbaric chambers, Moxie, Bushian acupuncture, cranial sacral. And you start to believe, like most concussion survivors, that you have to start living a new normal. You got to just manage these symptoms in this life. And so luckily there was this voice in the back of my head that said, I think you'll find something. And I was reading PubMed papers and yeah, luckily I did. Luckily, I found mushrooms. So saved my life.
Yeah, excellent. It's nice to see you looking so healthy and be so keen to talk about it. Do you think there was a little bit of opposition to start with about sort of discussing some of the troubles of the league, and were you kind of encouraged to be more positive about your time playing?
Yeah. So like when you're in hockey, you just know, right? Like if you start to question certain things, like it is very almost cult-like, almost like the army, I would imagine. In speaking with a lot of veterans who are taking on this type of therapy, athletes and veterans have the same type of mindset, right? You sacrifice yourself for the good of the team or the good of the mission. And you do not speak negatively about the employer. Because if you're deemed that you are a problem, you're out, right? You have to toe the line. And so I just kind of threw up my arms. I was really luckily, like I was very frustrated, mostly sad, really, really hurt that my friend had passed away so young. His son was born 2 months after he passed away. I just had this young child in front of me. I was 30. Like I wanted to keep playing, but I couldn't. And so but I've always kind of been outspoken. Like the way I played my career, every single coach, most GMs would tell me, hey man, chill out. Like don't play that way. Nobody. And I wouldn't listen. I would always be on the edge, and I wear my heart on my sleeve and I always tell the truth, and so I just felt like I needed to tell the truth. And the Players Tribune platform was just coming out. I think they recognized that this was an issue. The 2013 NFL concussion settlement just settled. If you really dug into the truth about what was going on, they were communicating about the risks and how bad these NFL guys and the NHL, they were working together to not show us like the real risks or tell us about it. So that kind of made me feel a certain way. And then, I just started to really wear that frustration on my sleeve every day. And so I thought I was being a really good concussion advocate by telling everybody about the treatments that I was doing and then highlighting everything that was wrong with the league. And every analyst that was like, talking about the league who wasn't highlighting the risk of concussion, I would go after. And I burned a lot of bridges. And in hindsight, I was just too emotional. But I was suffering. I was in a really scary spot. I've since made a lot of apologies, and people I think understand where I was, and it's funny, right? One of the reasons that this medicine works so well neurologically, it's been shown to kind of regenerate the brain, or this phenomena of neuroplasticity. But what it ultimately does is helps you shift your perspective of how you view things.
Mm.
And I was viewing and when I say this victimhood mindset that clearly doesn't work, that gets people pinholed into viewing their world and seeing everything that's wrong. And so I was seeing everything that was wrong and I was highlighting it. But in my first journey, that was keeping me sick because highlighting the negativity was only allowing me to see the negativity. And so that was a really big shift. Obviously, these mushrooms like helped stimulate different regions of my brain, got it back communicating again, took away my light sensitivity, my slurred speech. So I was immediately starting to be encouraged that this could be it. I waited a year, until I really started to talk about it. And yeah, it's been 6.5 years. I've been symptom free. I reversed the dementia diagnosis. And, anybody can have this, like anybody
Mm.
who wants to commit, to this medicine and use it. It's not a one and done. It's not a one cure. I still use the medicine as a part of my wellness regimen. But it's been really phenomenal for me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you say you were in a bad place when you were sharing on your Player Tribune, but it was the sharing of those stories that kind of did bring about a sea change in the culture. So your impact on being open and sharing was obviously very uncomfortable at the time, but did encourage people to have conversations about what can we do? What can we think about that can change in the sport to prevent this happening?
Yes, yes, and you to your previous question, that you're gonna be alienated, right? I knew I
Mm.
was cutting myself off from the only community that I've ever known. So that was a different, but, like, the frustration and the anger was taking over.
Mm.
Um, there were a couple people, I still remember to this day, Paul Bissonnette, he said to me, "Hey, man, I know you're upset, but like, remember all the times that the league protected you? Because I got into a lot of trouble that a lot of people don't know about." And I was like, yes. But I couldn't get there, and I now realize that throughout my life, and I work with clients who you know, this belief or this faith system that even though things are uncomfortable and things are happening to you, they're happening for you. I
Mm.
just didn't quite have that perspective. Um, but in order to keep what I have now, I feel like I have to give it away. And in most businesses and and in life, the first through the wall is the bloodiest. And it could have been a really easy life for me. I could have stayed and made a couple $100,000 just signing autographs in Chicago, but my soul, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So
Did you find people were also positive, as well as obviously the difficulties of sharing it? Did you find that it brought support out to you from people you may not have expected?
it did, yeah, but the support was in the background. It was,
Mm.
"Hey, man, keep going. Thank you for what you're saying." But it was from analysts that were making money in the system, so of
Mm.
course they couldn't publicly. So yeah, there were some encouraging people who I won't name because, I don't want them to get in trouble. And, but yeah, there was a lot of support. The reality of what I'm talking about affects a lot more men and I say men, I'm just talking about the NHL,
Yeah.
in a lot more people than we realize. I would say it's, between like 60 to 80% of us. And what's really cool, you mentioned like the conversations, is like when we're suffering in general, when people are suffering, we tend to think that our suffering is like special to us. It's isolated to us, and
Mm,
then you have more of these conversations with some of these Hall of Famers who are some of my former teammates, and they're like, hey man, like first 2 years, like I was going through it. I was really
mm,
angry, or I had this transition that was really, really difficult. All of us go through that. And I think it goes back to that kind of like we don't allow ourselves to almost grieve this big part of us that's dead, that we can no longer tap into, and
mm,
so the suffering is a lot more common. And I think just innately, the pain of losing one of my friends, the thought of what I was thinking about doing to myself, and then inherently how that would have permeated through my family, was really scary, because I'm a pretty happy guy. Um, and I just, when you're in those phases, you really just don't want anybody else. If you could mitigate some of that suffering from others going through it, those were like really big reasons why I tried to speak out.
yeah. And obviously you had a lot of support from your family and your friends around you. Was there support for you sort of speaking out and sort of addressing these things and now moving forward with businesses and with ideas of, you know, charitable organizations that you're trying to do? Was there any kind of people warning you against that, or was everyone very supportive of it?
Again, yeah, you're kind of like on this island, but I'm, used to that, right? Like most professional athletes have to be very, very comfortable, first of all, being uncomfortable. You're pretty much always in pain. And then you have to be really comfortable living in your own head, because you're very much there. You're a part of the team, but when you're in the gym, when you're on the ice, like it's you and the
Mhm.
sport, and connecting with yourself and your role and your mind and your spirit and what you're bringing to the team. So I was comfortable. Oh, I was okay. Like I kind of wanted to be alone, in the sense. And so like building, I was used to doing that. And yeah, the charity was a really good start. It was something that I had no idea how to do. And I don't know if I did it well, but like it was just me and my wife picking up the phone and just saying, hey, this is what we're doing. We don't have it figured out because I'm still suffering. But this place in LA with Linda Ho, which was moxibustion acupuncture, was really amazing for me. Like I felt phenomenal for
Mm,
like months on end, not just weeks. It was a lot of really good relief. Um, and so we would just talk about our experience, and try to help that way. um and it's when I finally found the mushrooms and these ceremonies, and when I finally got these like clear brain scans, I took a step back. And I mean, people could immediately hear it in my voice, and like see it,
mm,
right? You can see it when somebody's kind of like, oh, they're back, right? Like good for them. They're feeling better. You
mhm,
can kind of tell, because it's not so negative every time you get on a video. Um, and one of the things that it said, and I know it's a weird thing to talk about, and call a natural medicine that's been here longer than human beings, intelligent. But when you're in these ceremonies, it can give you messages. And one of the things that it said was, we can get your brain healthy, but you have to use your platform to provide access and get more people to come and do this. And so it started kind of with those charities, right? Like feeling a little better at some, and then now it's grown into these businesses that clearly need to be propped up because they don't exist,
yeah.
and so, Experience Onward is something now that I'm doing in these legal states in Oregon and Colorado. And the goal, and we're going to, start talking about this more, is to get the first ever in-human observational study done with Johns Hopkins. So we've created the study and the frameworks. We have a Harvard doctor, researcher, somebody well known from in the CTE research realm. It's with Johns Hopkins, so a very well respected academic institution. And then hopefully the NHLPA and the NFLPA and the leagues will see the benefit in what we're trying to do as far as pre and post diagnostics for post concussion syndrome, and we'll see where it lies. So there's like started with the charity, and then it's moved into these kind of these businesses that, but always with the crux of, can we track data so that we can prove scientifically that this is moving the needle? Spiritually, you can see it, you can hear it, but yeah, we need some science and data to back it up in this world.
Absolutely. And it's something that, again, it's very similar to a charity in the sense that you're trying to not only make change for yourself and figure your own path into retirement and through retirement, but you're still trying to impact others and help others by prioritizing that research, getting that data and evidence as well, which is really encouraging. Have you had any feedback from any league officials at any point in your journey? Firstly, when things were going very badly and you were speaking out about CTE and mental health, and Steve as well, or even more recently when you were beginning to sort of identify things that were beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll say, I do the things that I do because I was told to do this by this medicine, and this medicine continues to keep me happy and healthy. And so like it is, I don't want to position it as something like that's noble, even though I like being of service because it gets me out of my own head, but it's more so like out of also fear that if I don't do what I said I was going to do in that ceremony, that it would stop. It's going to stop working for me,
Right.
So I'll just say that. But there were people that were like, whoa, man, you like mostly people that were like, are you okay? Like everybody knew that I was really hurting, and you could see on the ice, like with the way that I played, right? Like there's no filter. Like you got all of me. And so it's very much like that in how I am in real life, except I'm usually not angry. Like I'm a very, like I said, like kind of polar opposite. So it was a lot of and again, behind the scenes, nobody outwardly asking, but there were a lot of people that checked up on me, especially from the Hawks organization, even though I was attacking the Hawks organization. And I've since like gone back for like a couple alumni things, and everybody's welcomed me. I don't think I did anything that is like that can't be remedied with a face to face. And so I did those. And but I think, yeah, there was, for all of the things that I was saying, people were people were a little bit concerned that I would become one of the statistics. But and I'm hopeful about the future. A lot of people have actually said, a couple guys are like, when I tell them about this new study that I want the NHLPA, they put $4 million into like putting it towards some of these research initiatives, right, for alternative medicines. And a lot of people are like, and time will tell, because I haven't officially approached them yet. Are you worried that if you approach them, they're going to say no just out of spite? And it's a thought for sure, but it's not a worry, because my type of mentality now is like, I'll just find private funding for it, and I have a list of 20 NHLPA guys that all want to participate. So
Great.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. And obviously you've spoken about sort of some of the other research on CTE as well. And do you think that that's encouraging people to pledge to donate their brain when their time comes for further research or getting involved in things?
Not the greatest.
So I was just sort of saying, do you feel like being vocal and speaking out, even those early stages before you've discovered what's been beneficial to you, has helped people take the problem of CTE more seriously, or pledging to donate their brain to research or put themselves forward for research like you have.
I'd like to think so. Yeah. If I take a second to think about it, I know, it made an impact, and it's, is it quantifiable by hundreds, or that doesn't matter to me, because I do get messages and have gotten messages that again, like, this I saw how bad you were, and then now you're completely changed. And this change hasn't been evident for a month or 3 months. It's like
Mm.
6.5 years. So I just recently, we had a retreat in on last week on Saturday, and one of the girls was there, and she's like, the reason I'm here is because I was like, man, if this guy can do it, like, I can do it, and I'm like, perfect. Like, that is the message, right? You're just trying to empower people
Mm.
to who are very defeated, going through this medical system of all specialists. There's no kind of one in individual that, like, truly knows, and if somebody's telling you and sitting across from you and truly telling you how complex this system is, and these 86 billion neurons are communicating to the heart and the organs, and it's pumping your blood without you even thinking about it, and growing your nails and growing your hair, and it's when you really delve into it, it's really complex. And so, you know um nobody really knows, except you, except like how you feel. And if
Mm.
people have science is really important, right? For sure. But if people have a certain thing that you notice, and they were in a certain way, you should listen to them. You should
Mm.
talk to them, and you should find out, like, hey, what did you do? Maybe that could work for you. That's kind of how I moved through the system. I was like, when I stopped going to those centers was when I was asking about, like, my hormones and blood work, when they wouldn't take it, because I just had this thought in my mind of, like, all right, if we're doing all these great exercises and stuff, right? But I feel as though, like, I just don't have the energy to do them. I started to research the pituitary gland and how that dictates the hormones. And if the brain is off, if the hardware isn't communicating to that, then you can have bad sleep, low energy, your testosterone could be off, your cortisol. And that was exactly what was happening. So I went and tested my blood, and then um, I started to do things to try to, get rid of the brain fog, get rid of the brain fatigue. And um, so it's a really complex journey for concussion survivors, and we go to the ocular specialist and the vestibular specialist and then the neurologist, and it can get really tiring. So it's really
Mm.
good. I encourage people, if anybody's listening to this, like, if you find somebody that is talking about a certain modality that has really helped them, and they look like they are helped and not just kind of selling something, you should listen to them and then go try it for yourself. Because hyperbaric chamber didn't work for me, but it
Mm.
works for a lot of people. So I still kind of highlight it, because some people have really been helped by doing hyperbaric that have had a brain injury.
Mm. So going back a step, just thinking about the number of people who have these issues with concussion, and obviously non-concussion as well, subconcussive hits and issues. Do you think there is a time when the NHL will admit that there is a link between that and some of the issues that players are facing? Obviously, the NFL has settled a suit and made an agreement. The NHL, or Gary Bettman, still denies that there is a link between contact sport or hockey and brain injury. Do you think that the tide will turn on that?
Yeah, it's like, man, I have so many other things that I need to do that are
Mm.
directly impacting people's lives, that I just cannot put my attention there anymore,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And I just think of, like, how we always weigh, like, risk benefit, like,
Mm.
what is the ultimate benefit of him saying that? Is it more awareness? Of course. Is it, I just, first of all, I'm not in the league anymore, so I don't truly know what they're doing, because they could have upped their game with, and we can see with the spotters, and then My son, he's 11. He's not hitting right now. He's right. So the neck strength is getting up. So there are some positive things. I always kind of go back to one of the messages that Mushroom said to me in the ceremony that helped me switch my perspective was like, hey, man, did you really need somebody, a specialist or a doctor who really doesn't know? We've already covered that. Tell you that getting punched in the face and getting in 164 fights and hitting thousands of people was going to make you not feel good? Like, didn't you know that? When you think of it objectively, do you not know that? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, you're right. So do they have an obligation to kind of help shepherd us in a way, right? This medical oversight. I mean, at the end of the
Mm.
day, we're 1099s. So we're independent contractors. So that's our union's job, I think, right?
Mm.
More so than the league. Is it the right thing to do? Absolutely. Do guys want that oversight in their career? Because if you get hurt, you're out of the lineup. You could be out of the league within 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
there's just so much psychology that goes into, and I think it's pretty well known now. Like, there's a lot of guys that are hurting, and you're going to be hurting if you don't watch your brain health, quality of life. Ultimately, would it be nice for him to say it? It's the right thing to do for sure, even though it's a very good argument. Like, you can't definitively say, um, that it's just a really good argument. It goes back to like what I was saying before, right? How complex this system is, so we can kind
Mm.
of deniable plausibility. It's like it's perfect. So
Yeah.
it would help a lot of people if he sees this. It would probably help tens of thousands, if not millions of people that are still suffering with post-concussion syndrome. So it's
Mm.
definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah. And one of the things that they've changed a lot since you've retired is obviously reducing the amount of fighting and kind of putting a lot of the blame of concussion and brain injury on the fighting.
Hmm.
Do you have an account of how much of it was the fighting and how much of it was the just regular body checking that just comes day to day in the hockey and in training and in games?
Yeah. I mean, I won most of my fights,
Mm.
if not 95% of them. I just think it's repetitive. It's this repetitive, constant battering. And, you only get like 2 months off, right? And then you're right back into it. There's so many factors. It's also, where did you lose me on? So I
Um,
think you lost me on like, I think I was
how
talking
much
about.
was fighting and how much were the hits and the training and the professionalization of the game?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of both.
Mhm.
I didn't lose many fights, but my last two were pretty big hits to the same spot on my brain. And so I just think at some point your body, mostly your spirit, knows that the hits are starting to hurt more, and there's these consequences that are starting to happen more often.
Mm.
And it's just, you just can't fight anymore. And the hardware is not communicating with the software and the body. There was a really interesting study that came out where if you have a brain injury, you're 80% more susceptible to tearing your ACL.
Yeah.
And that goes to say that if the brain is hurt, it's not firing the right muscles, even the right ligaments, which is kind of like really scary. So I think it was a combination. It was a really long
Mm.
career. 10 years is a long time to play. But yeah, it got pinned on the hockey guys or the fighters. I think we also have to remember, like, the fighters back in the day, they would start the game by fighting. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't, and so they would just hit each other.
Mm.
And they were big guys. So that was a little different than when I came in. And you see guys like Rick Nash, who retired, didn't have many fights in the league.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's just that repetitive, constant battering.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I've got one sort of more question to ask you about the legal side of things, and then I want to kind of delve a bit more deeper into the experience onward and that kind of information.
Sure.
obviously you've talked in the past about Steve Montador's case, which is still ongoing, and any other sort of involvement. I know you were sort of saying you've kind of stepped away from some of that fight in order to work on progressing your own health and sort of making other positive changes. But how important do you think it is, these sort of legal challenges? And they're not just happening in hockey; they're obviously happening in football, in rugby, in soccer, in a whole range of other sports as well.
It's important. It's really important. His trial is still going on, or maybe about to start. I don't quite
Mm,
know where it is. I would love to be more involved. I just there were things that started to happen that where I just had to kind of lay down my sword in a way and
mm,
do what I'm doing now. Man, I haven't really thought about it in a long time. Um, hmm. I don't know if it was the right thing to do, you know, to kind of not be a witness and not. I mean, I might have to look back at it, but there
mm,
was, you know, it put my wife at risk. It put my family at risk. It just so um You know, I think, there's a big part of me too that was kinda like, I got this message that like, "Hey, you've done enough, like, you've fought long and hard,"
mm,
and, it's funny, the last time that I thought about, the trial and what's happening was when I started to, like, be really proud. I used to give myself a lot of guilt and shame about the things that I did in the league, about
mm,
beating people up, about punching people in the face to win hockey games. And through this journey that I've been on, I've like, man, I'm so proud of what I did. It is so hard to do that. It is like, man, and I loved it, like it wasn't the fact that I was just trying to, you know, competition, like men competing, even women, going up against each other, building your body and your mind and your spirit up, and then testing it in front of like 20,000 people yeah, it's just a 35-pound trophy, but man, you are the best of the best, and
mm,
and so there was a long time when I was like in that victimhood mindset that I was shameful. I didn't want people to know. And now, Steve's dad, Paul, actually
mm,
messaged me like, "Hey, why are you reposting fights now and glorifying?" And the answer is, I'm proud of what I did. I know that it hurt me. I know that
mm,
it hurt a lot of people. I obviously know that my friend's not here. Is it all because of fighting? Absolutely not. Does a lot of it have to do with the hits? And yes. Um, were like, do we take responsibility in the path that we chose? I do, and
mm,
I know Steve would too. And he's said it and I've said it before. Some people just aren't meant to be here for a long time. He packed a lot of years into 35. I only knew him for probably 7 or 8.
mm,
Um, would I like to be doing this with him? With Steve? Yes, because he was starting to look into some of these medicines.
yeah.
Would I be here without Steve's death? I don't think so, because his death helped me retire. So yeah, I should probably look back into it and maybe see what else I can do. But yeah, it's this life. When you look at your life, right? When you zoom out and you kind of what I've been able to do is realize that all of the things that have happened to me are like so perfect to lead me
Mm,
into who I am today. And I really like where I am today. And I've got 5 beautiful kids, and the home we've built with my wife is amazing. And the mission that I'm on of trying to get this natural medicine to people that does so much, is great, and it's all a part of it. And I'm only one person. It's like, some things you have to decide and think
Yeah.
really objectively. And I thought long and hard about it. I was I didn't take any of the settlement from the league. Because it came with an NDA and it
Yeah.
came with all these things. It's like, no, I'm gonna just, maybe take some time. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's knowing what makes sense to you at the time as well, and what you need to do, because it's not, like you say, it's not something you heal from once. It's something that you continually work through, and you're making the path that you're doing. And
Yeah,
you've
and
also got a very supportive family as well, which some players lose because of the way the brain injury or the culture or the retirement makes them feel. But you've kind of retained that, and understandably you're going to focus on that.
yeah, listen, I think everybody knows in their heart, right? Like, is a judgment going to change anything to know that, like, the Blackhawks clearing him for 4 concussions in that short
Mm.
window, and then the league in general clearing him for 19 across a really short career? Like, if we just say that, everybody knows that that medical oversight was a failure, a
Mm.
complete failure. And it directly impacted the way that he lived his life. I mean, he was sober for a really long time and, like, emitting this beautiful energy. And then those 4 concussions in that short amount of time
Mm.
just really hurt him, really hurt him. And it's a big reason why he's not here. And I wish he was, I wish Ray was here too.
Yeah.
So, um, but, he'll always have a special place in my heart. But this conversation, which I didn't, I'll reach back out and see if there's anything that I can do.
Mm. Yeah. That's great to hear. And I want to hear a bit more about your sort of own journey. You've talked a little bit about the various steps you've taken on today, but also in previous podcasts. Can you tell me about your kind of latest sort of idea? I know we've got a code to share with more information about Experience Onward. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. So when I got better, I took brain scans and blood work before I left for a mushroom journey. These mushrooms are showing a lot of benefit in promoting what's called neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
Sorry, this internet, man. This is so
No, no problem. I just wrote down the last bit that you said, just so we'd remember it. You
okay.
started by saying that when you left for a ceremony, you did brain scans and blood work because you wanted to
Mhm.
see the benefits for neuroplasticity. So do you want to start again with that, and then?
Sure, sure. Um, so when I was going through the medical system, and I was always reading PubMed papers, and I came across a study that was showing that these mushrooms were able to stimulate what's called neuroplasticity, or communication in the brain that's never really been seen before. And I posted a lot on my Instagram, like the placebo brain and the brain on mushrooms and this over
Mm.
communication. And that's what I was hearing a lot in these concussion or stroke rehabilitation centers. So I thought that it could work for me. On top of that, it was showing that it was a really potent neuro anti-inflammatory, and reduces body inflammation as well. It attaches to what's called a 5-HT2A receptor, so it almost mimics serotonin, which is like a nice.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you still got me? Okay. Let's try it again. Take 3.
Yeah, you were just saying about mimic serotonin.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it mimics serotonin, and we all know that the gut is the second brain.
Mm.
So all of these things, I was just kind of, in my history of being an athlete and knowing what to put in my body, and researching and the science, it looked really positive. And to be honest, it provided a little bit of hope, and I was pretty hopeless at that point. And so I did a big journey. I went on like a microdosing or low dose regimen, and after 6 months, I had no abnormalities in my brain scans. My blood work looked
Mm.
great. Like, my free testosterone rose 1,200%. My cortisol levels dropped, and I waited a year, and then I just kind of started talking about this for concussion survivors. That's what it did for me, like, neurologically,
Mm.
physiologically. But I mean, man, the biggest benefits and the biggest growth I got was what it did for me spiritually. You know, how it changed the way that I viewed what I did, and just kind of now how I can, move forward in just a little bit more of a peaceful manner, and like actually liking me, and then the things that I accomplished, because they're really hard to do, and I should have been proud of it, but I couldn't be.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's talk us through what a day in the life looks like now, because obviously you do a whole range of things to kind of keep your optimum health.
Yeah, I didn't work out for like 4 years after I retired. And so, now it's exercise. I live in Florida, so I get out in the sun. I have
Mm,
a sauna that I use daily. I have a cold plunge that I use. So a lot of mindfulness practices, breath work. As I operate these businesses, a lot of my day is just trying to be of service, and getting on discovery calls, and doing webinars, and just talking to people, trying to just give them hope and empower them to know that this could help them,
mm,
because it's really stigmatized. And yeah, I mean, that's the focus of all my days. I wake up now. I don't sleep in until 3 p.m. like I used to do, and go to bed at 3 a.m. and try to miss as much of the day as possible. I
mm,
I live like a really happy life, and since the beginning of this year, I seem to be like kind of coming into my own, and I've spoken about it before, where like this is one of the first times in my life that I like fully 100% am committed to living,
mm,
to being happy, and my kids are amazing. I have a really great wife. Everybody's happy and healthy, and we just opened up a new center in Colorado, a
mm.
private retreat center that has all of the wellness and amenity tools, and I'm just really excited. We have a ABC special coming out here soon, and then we've got this Johns Hopkins study that we're going to try to hopefully get all the leagues together and get 30 guys treated, 20 athletes, and then ten veterans. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because obviously some of the issues with CT common across veterans and athletes in contact sport.
Absolutely. Yeah, the blasts, and
Yeah.
the spiritual maladies are there as well.
Mm,
But definitely, neurologically and physiologically, there's a lot of damage, and these medicines, specifically mushrooms, have been shown to repair that. So.
mm. And you mentioned briefly, obviously, you've got Oregon and Colorado due to their legal status. How much of a difficulty is it that obviously there are some states now that allow this kind of work and this kind of healing? How difficult is it that several don't, or countries that wouldn't allow it in any way?
Yeah, so recently with the executive order that was signed, everybody thinks, well, great, like, everything's going to be legal, and it's not so fast. But the definition of a Schedule 1 substance is that it's highly addictive and there's no medicinal value. So what it does do is, if it's fast tracking these FDA approvals in the clinical trials for these substances, then from a regulatory standpoint, the DEA will have to reschedule, and so that could help a lot of
Mm,
these programs and a lot of these research programs and these statewide bills, which there's over 100 of them. There's over 150 FDA approved clinical trials right now. I think there's over 7 substances that have this breakthrough therapy designation. And then Oregon and Colorado are the 2 legal states where you can go and use this as adult therapeutic use.
mm,
So you don't necessarily need to have an ailment to be able to access it, and that's the world that we play in. And so, from a regulatory standpoint, it could help. It could help open up more states. But two in 2026 is really good, and if you can travel or drive, then you can access these programs. So it's really exciting. It's exciting to be in an industry that isn't treating symptoms, right? We're essentially treating individuals and the
Mm,
spirit and empowering them to think differently. And the side effects of mushrooms just happen to be that, they stimulate new neuronal pathways, and they're a potent anti-inflammatory, and they make you a nicer person. They make you calmer. They help you sleep better. If you can commit to a process of going into an altered state, shifting your worldview, perspectives of people, places, and things, and then coming back to this body, you can live a really happy life.
mm. So, what would the kind of meaningful reform look like? Firstly, for sports like hockey, football, soccer, and also then in terms of legalization of medicine, of plant medicine.
Yeah, I tell athletes all the time, right? Like, I mean, we work with a lot of active professional athletes and some former, a lot of former, but they can't say anything because of the legalities.
Mm,
But the more athletes that speak out, the easier it is for others to listen, because of just how stringent we are with what we put in our body, and the trust that we
mm,
convey to the public. So the more people that speak out, the better. And then with the descheduling, then the leagues will likely take it off of their banned substance list. It's not on, mushrooms aren't on a lot of the leagues already. Banned substances, they don't test for it, they don't
yeah.
view it as a performance enhancement, which might change, based off of how you view somebody's energy levels afterwards, and I think athletes have a crucial role to play. And then I'll say, like, you don't need to be sick to take advantage of the benefits of this
Yeah.
medicine, so that's a really interesting angle too.
Yeah. So, what would you want your legacy to be as a player and as an advocate, and taking your career as a whole, pre and
Mm.
post retirement?
Man, so legacy is an interesting word. I I hope first and foremost that my kids like me and they still want to hang out with me when they get out of the house. And my goal is to, like, see my kids have kids. And then after that, I just want to be known, and I think I already am in the hockey world and in life and business, like, just as this um person who worked really hard and tried his best, to maybe, be of service and make the world a better place. Um, so yeah, it feels, I'm in a really nice pocket of my life where I also don't have everything figured out, and I think that's okay. And so yeah, I want people to know, and that they could, trust me, and hopefully they can access this medicine, because it's really beneficial.
Yeah. It's like you're saying, you got to look at, is it somebody selling something? Is it somebody who's got something to gain? Is it somebody who's being paid by the league or being paid by a media organization? And obviously, it's clear from the work that you're doing that this is about wanting to drive like large scale change, rather than being something that you're looking at as being that you think that this is going to be what you have to say in order to get the paycheck.
Mm. Yeah, no, let me be very clear. The things that I'm saying and doing are inherently selfish. We all do that. The only thing, this goes back to what I was saying before. I'm not looking at it from a monetization standpoint. I'm
Mm,
looking at it from the thing that I get to keep. I, with that message, was told that I have to provide access. And so, with access, the more access that I give, the more belief I have that this medicine will keep giving me my brain health, and I'll keep living a really happy and fulfilling life, which has happened.
mm,
I've had the best 6.5 years of my life, hands down, which is really great. So, yeah. Um, I do benefit, from people, trusting that this could maybe improve their life. So
Mm.
um, it's cool. It's really cool and it's awesome. And I feel very blessed. I really do feel really, really blessed that I get to profit. And I don't mean just money. I
Yeah.
mean there's a lot of other ways that I profit off of people doing this work, but it's very much them doing the inner work, and then they go back to their families. Like, one of the best things that happens is the wife maybe texts my wife, or they're like, whoa. They're immediately, like, you could see it in people's faces. They carry themselves differently. They're on a different type of frequency, and then people just get curious, and then it starts to bleed, into, what do they say? You heal yourself, and then you heal your family, and then hopefully you get to heal, part of your community. So
That's really, really great. One kind of last sort of summing up question. Obviously, we kind of skipped over a lot of your career, but you had your 10-year professional career, and obviously a long time before being professional, where you were working very hard at hockey, and then since then you've got what you've accomplished in the last 10 years. If you could go back and do it all again, knowing what you know now, how would that look?
yeah, I mean, maybe I would have invested like 100 grand in a Bitcoin, but that's about it, you know. So yeah, no, I wouldn't change anything. I really wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your sort of candor and openness. It's really good to be able to talk to somebody who's using what they've been through as a way of making positive changes.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you keep doing what you're doing too. I know that you're helping a lot of people. So thanks for doing this. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dan Carcillo didn't just survive his battle with CTE, he found a way through it. Part of that journey led him to found Experience Onward, a legal psilocybin wellness community based in Colorado and Oregon, offering guided therapy retreats, individual experiences, and microdosing programs, all with physician oversight and trauma-informed care. If Dan's story resonated with you, learn more at experienceonward.com. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Dan and Dr. Victoria Silverwood. This is exactly the kind of story we started Skates and Scars to tell. The ones that happen after the final buzzer. The ones the league doesn't want you to hear. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.